The snow fell in relentless sheets, blanketing the narrow alley behind the Han River's edge in Seoul like a shroud. The wind howled through the skeletal branches of riverside willows, carrying the sharp tang of frozen water and diesel exhaust from distant barges. It was the kind of night that turned the city into a ghost town, the sodium glow of street lamps flickering against iced pavement, casting long shadows that danced like wary sentinels. In this forsaken stretch, far from the neon pulse of Gangnam's towers, a woman huddled against the unyielding brick of an old warehouse, her breath fogging the air in desperate puffs. Li Mei, a Chinese immigrant who'd crossed borders 2 years ago, chasing whispers of opportunity in Korea's underbelly, had never imagined ending up here. Her thin coat, borrowed from a market stall frayed at the cuffs, did little against the bite of sub-zero chill. She pounded on the rusted side door of what she knew only as the boss's safe house, a nondescript building that locals avoided like a plague spot. Rumors swirled in the dim-lit tea-houses of Itaewon. This was the domain of Kang Ji-hoon, the iron-fisted head of the Black Lotus Syndicate, a man whose name evoked both fear and reluctant respect. He controlled the docks, the smuggling routes along the river, and the shadows that stretched into politics and police precincts. But tonight, survival trumped caution. "Please!" she called out, her voice cracking against the wind, Mandarin-tinged Korean raw from the cold. "I'll freeze to death outside. Let me in, just for the night." Her fingers, numb and blue, throbbed as she hammered again. She'd fled her cramped apartment in Chinatown after a tip-off. Rivals from a splinter faction, the Red Dragons, were hunting her. Why? A ledger she'd glimpsed at her job in a dockside warehouse, pages of coded shipments, bribes, and names that could topple empires. She'd copied a fragment, hidden it in her shoe, thinking it might buy her leverage or a quick exit from this life. But now, cornered by the storm and unseen eyes, leverage felt like a curse. The door creaked open without warning, spilling a sliver of warm amber light into the night. A hulking figure filled the frame, broad shoulders under a black wool coat, face half-shadowed by a fedora pulled low. Not the boss, she realized, but one of his enforcers, his eyes scanning the alley with the precision of a hawk. "Who sent you?" he growled, his breath steaming. "No one," May stammered, stepping forward into the light, her dark hair matted with snow. "I work the manifests at Hunjin Docks. I saw things. They're after me. Please, I beg you." Her knees buckled slightly. The exhaustion of evasion catching up, the late shifts sorting cargo logs, the anonymous calls warning her to run, the burner phone she'd ditched in a dumpster 2 blocks back. The enforcer, Jay, she'd learn later, hesitated, his hand hovering near the concealed holster at his belt. He glanced over his shoulder into the dimly lit interior, where the hum of a generator and the scent of strong coffee wafted out. Rules were ironclad in Ji-hoon's world. No strays, no loose ends. But the woman's plea hung in the air, fragile as the ice cracking on the river nearby. With a grunt, he stepped aside. "Inside, but if you're lying, you won't see dawn." May stumbled over the threshold, the door slamming shut behind her like a vault ceiling. The warmth hit her like a wave, radiators clanking softly, the air thick with the aroma of steamed rice and gun oil. The safe house was a fortress disguised as austerity, reinforced walls hidden behind peeling wallpaper, security cameras blinking in the corners, a long oak table scarred from countless strategy sessions. Men in crisp suits moved like shadows, murmuring into earpieces, their eyes flicking to her with cold assessment. Ji-hoon himself emerged from a side room, his presence commanding silence. Tall and lean, with sharp features etched by years of calculated risks, he wore a tailored vest over a silk shirt, a gold watch glinting under the low-hanging bulb. His hair was slicked back, eyes dark and unreadable, carrying the weight of a man who'd buried brothers and built an empire from the river's mud. He'd risen through the ranks after his father's assassination, a hit pinned on Chinese triads, vowing a code: protect the family, honor debts, never let innocents bleed for the game. But trust, that was a luxury he rationed like smuggled whiskey. "Who are you?" His voice was low, laced with the clipped authority of someone used to obedience. He gestured to a chair, but didn't sit himself, arms crossed as Jay relayed her plea. "Li Mei," she said, rubbing her hands together, the thaw bringing pins and needles. "I handle shipping logs. Last week I saw discrepancies, containers marked for electronics but weights off. Then a dragon enforcer cornered me, asking about a ledger page. I ran. Your warehouse borders theirs, I thought. Maybe you'd know how to make them back off." Ji-hoon's gaze sharpened, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. The Black Lotus had been bleeding routes to the dragons for months, intercepted manifests, tampered seals. If she'd seen something real, it could be a thread to pull their rivals apart, or a trap. He leaned in, the faint scent of his cologne, sandalwood and steel, cutting through the room's staleness. "You think knocking on my door saves you? This isn't charity." Mei met his eyes, defiance sparking through her fear. "I'm not asking for pity. I have information. In exchange, protection. One night, then I'm gone." A beat of silence stretched, broken only by the distant wail of a siren echoing off the river. Ji-hoon nodded to Jay, who vanished into the shadows to check the perimeter. "Stay, for now." He turned away, but paused at the door, his voice dropping. "But if you're carrying more than desperation, it ends badly." As the door to his office clicked shut, Mei sank into the chair, the ledger fragment burning against her ankle like a secret flame. Outside, the snow piled higher, muffling the world. But inside, eyes watched, cameras whirring softly, guards exchanging glances. Was the boss's mercy a lifeline or a noose? And what had she just invited into her fragile escape? The first clue came hours later, in the quiet hours before dawn. Jay returned with a steaming mug, his face tighter than before. "Boss wants you to describe that ledger, every detail." But as she spoke, she noticed his sleeve, a faint red stain, like ink or blood, hastily wiped. An accident? Or had someone already followed her trail to this door? Mei's words faltered as she traced the ledger's details in the dim glow of the safe-house lamp. Columns of numbers that didn't add up, shipments logged as spare parts, but heavy enough for contraband, a circled name she couldn't place. Silver Fox. Jay leaned against the scarred oak table, his massive frame casting a shadow that swallowed half the room. The air hummed with the low buzz of fluorescent strips overhead, mingled with the faint drip of melting snow from the eaves outside. She'd expected skepticism, maybe outright dismissal, but his eyes narrowed, absorbing every syllable like a ledger entry himself. "Silver Fox," he repeated, voice gravelly, pulling out a battered notebook from his coat pocket. He scribbled without looking down, the pen scratching like nails on ice. "You're sure? Not a code for something else?" His sleeve shifted as he wrote, and there it was again, that red stain, darker now under the light, flaking at the edges. Blood, or just the rust from the door handle in this perpetual damp? Mei's pulse quickened. She'd seen enough dockside scuffles to know the difference, but accusing a guard on her first night here would be suicide. She nodded, forcing steadiness into her voice. Positive. It was in the margin, next to a manifest for the 3 a.m. barge from Busan. "I thought it was a client, but the dragon who cornered me," he mentioned it too, like I'd stolen their prize. The warmth of the mug Jay had given her had seeped into her bones, but it couldn't thaw the knot of fear twisting in her gut. Why had she spilled this to strangers? Gratitude for the shelter warred with the instinct screaming to bolt at first light. Jay snapped the notebook shut and straightened, his radio crackling to life with a burst of static. "Perimeter clear," a voice whispered through the earpiece, tinny and urgent. He tapped it off, glancing toward the office door where Ji-hoon had vanished. "Boss'll want to see this himself. Wait here." He lumbered away, boots thudding softly on the worn linoleum, leaving May alone with the room's ghosts. The walls seemed to press in, lined with locked cabinets that probably hid more than files, burner phones, encrypted drives, the quiet tools of a syndicate's survival. A faint scent of cigarette smoke lingered, stale and masculine from some late-night council. Minutes stretched into an uneasy vigil. May shifted in the chair, her ankle itching where the ledger scrap hid, taped against her skin like a guilty secret. She'd copied it on a whim during a solo shift, the warehouse's overhead lights buzzing like angry hornets, the river lapping at the pilings below. Opportunity in Seoul had soured fast, low wages, prying eyes from rival crews, and now this, dragged into a war she hadn't chosen. But running blind meant the dragons would find her eventually. Their network snaked through every Chinatown alley and port authority bribe. The office door swung open and Ji-hoon strode back in, his silk shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a thin silver chain that caught the light. No tie, no pretense, just raw command. He carried a slim tablet, its screen glowing with what looked like a digital map of the Han River docks, red pins marking key points. Jay flanked him, expression unreadable, the stain now concealed by his cuff. "Describe it again," Ji-hoon said, sliding into the chair opposite her. His eyes locked on hers, dark pools that seemed to weigh her soul against the storm outside. Up close, faint lines etched his forehead, souvenirs from a life of split-second calls, his father's death still a raw scar, driving that unyielding code, family first, debts honored, no innocence caught in the crossfire. May repeated the details, her Mandarin accent thickening under scrutiny. As she spoke, Ji-hoon tapped the tablet, zooming on a cluster of pins near Hanjin. "Weight's off by 20%, he murmured more to himself. "That's not error, that's rerouting. Dragons have been poaching our lanes for months, tampered GPS on the barges, guards bought off with promises of cuts." He leaned forward, the table creaking under his elbows, the air between them charged like the static before a blackout. "You saw Silver Fox. That's no client. It's a ghost operation. Old triad contact from the border runs, fencing laundered cash through fake shipments. If the dragons have it pinned to you—" "I didn't steal anything," May cut in, her voice sharper than intended. Defiance flared. She'd crossed into Korea fleeing her own family's debts, not to play pawn in someone else's empire. "I was just sorting logs, but if it gets them off my back, use it. In return, get me out of the city. A bus ticket, fake ID, whatever." Ji-hoon's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Protection isn't free, Lee May. You knock on my door, you're in my ledger now." He stood, gesturing to Jay. "Get her a room upstairs. Double the watch on the alley cams." As Jay nodded and moved to escort her, Ji-hoon paused, his gaze lingering, "And check her for bugs, thoroughly." The stairs creaked under their weight, leading to a narrow hallway lined with reinforced doors, the air cooler here laced with the musty tang of unused linens. Jay unlocked a sparse room, cot, basin, a single window barred and frosted over. "Boss doesn't trust easy," he grunted, handing her a threadbare blanket. "Sleep light. We move at dawn if the weather breaks." He left without another word, the lock clicking like a warning. May sank onto the cot, peeling off her shoe to check the scrap, intact, its ink smudged but legible. The room's silence amplified every sound, the wind rattling the window, a distant generator's hum, and then, faintly, a soft beep from down the hall. A door, or one of those cams whirring to life. She froze, ears straining. Paranoia, maybe, but in this world, shadows had eyes. Downstairs, Ji-hoon stared at the tablet, the map pulsing with new data. Jay reappeared, shaking his head. Clean, no trackers. But as Ji-hoon dismissed him, his own radio buzzed. Not the perimeter team, but an encrypted line from a lookout at the docks. Boss, we got a tail. Black sedan circling the river bend. Plates match a dragon runner. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened, the code burning in his veins. Protect what's yours. But was the woman upstairs an asset or the bait that would unravel it all? And if Silver Fox was real, who in his ranks had already whispered her arrival to the enemy? Dawn broke over the Han River like a reluctant witness, the snow from the night before crusting into treacherous sheets that crunched underfoot. The safe house stirred with the low murmur of voices and the clatter of metal, guards reloading clips, coffee brewing in a dented pot that filled the air with bitter steam. May had barely slept, the cot springs digging into her back, her mind replaying the beep in the hallway like a faulty alarm. She dressed quickly in the spare clothes Jay had left, an oversized sweater that smelled faintly of mothballs and cedar, tucking the ledger scrap deeper into her sock. Trust was a fragile currency here. One wrong move, and she'd be traded like the contraband she sorted. Downstairs, Ji-hoon paced the main room, the tablet balanced on the oak table amid scattered maps and half-empty mugs. His coat hung on a hook by the door, revealing the holstered pistol at his hip, a constant companion etched with the faint scars of use. The radio's warning from the dock's lookout hung heavy. He'd ordered a sweep, but the Black Lotus's edges were fraying. Bribed informants, hacked feeds, whispers that his father's old enemies were circling again. Silver Fox wasn't just a name. It was a spectre from the border wars, a triad smuggler who'd vanished after a botched deal that cost Ji-hoon his mentor. If May had truly glimpsed it, she was either a gift or a grenade. Jay burst through the side door, snow dusting his shoulders, breath heaving in white plumes. Sedan's gone, but they left tracks, heading toward the warehouses. Our guy's spooked. Says the dragons are pulling manifest early today. He shot a glance at the stairs as May's footsteps descended, then lowered his voice. She talk in her sleep? Or did we miss something? Ji-hoon waved him off, his jaw set like granite. Get the convoy ready. We're moving her to the penthouse. Can't risk another night here if they're sniffing. His code demanded protection for those under his roof, but autonomy chafed. He'd built the syndicate on calculated risks, not blind shelter. May entered then, her dark eyes wary, hair pulled back in a hasty knot that accentuated the sharp lines of her face. Lines born of too many borders crossed, too few safeties netted. "You're leaving?" she asked, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The room's warmth felt stifling now, the radiator's hiss underscoring the tension like a distant threat. Ji-hoon met her gaze, the sandalwood edge of his cologne cutting through the coffee steam. "Not without you. Dragons don't forget a face or a door you knocked on." He slid the tablet toward her. "Show me the scrap. If it's real, it buys your way deeper in." May hesitated, the push-pull of independence versus survival twisting inside her. She'd fled China to escape her family's gambling debts, scraping by on dock wages that barely covered the Itaewon rent. Handing over the fragment meant surrendering her only leverage. But the alternative, facing the cold alone, was a death sentence. With a nod, she pulled it from her sock, unfolding the smudged paper on the table. Ink blurred from sweat and haste, but the columns stood out, dates, weights, that circled Silver Fox next to a Busan route. Ji-hoon's fingers traced the lines, his touch precise, like diffusing a wire. "This matches our losses. 3 containers rerouted last month, GPS spoofed, guards claiming blackouts." He tapped the tablet, pulling up a grainy feed from a dockside camera. A black sedan idling near Hanjin at 2 a.m. Plates obscured by fog, but a partial match to the night's tale. "Your dragon friend? He's tying you to this because you saw too much. Or someone wants you to." Jay grunted, holstering a spare clip. "Boss, If Silver Fox is back, it's not just poaching. That's old money. Triad cash funneled through our lanes. Could be an inside play. The words landed like ice cracking on the river. May's stomach knotted. She'd sensed inconsistencies at work, the way the foreman avoided her eyes after late shifts, the anonymous calls on her burner that cut off mid-sentence. Was it coincidence, or had her prying eyes marked her from the start? "I didn't ask for this," she said, voice low, but edged. "Just a job. If your code means anything, get me clear. Don't drag me into your war." Ji-hoon's eyes softened fractionally, a rare fracture in the armor forged by his father's grave. He'd lost too many to blind loyalty, brothers in ambushes, a sister to a rival's poison, but her fire mirrored his own buried defiance. "War's already here, Li Mei. You knocked, I opened. Now we balance the ledger." He stood, signaling Jay. "Convoy leaves in 10. Blindfold optional, but trust is earned." The move unfolded like a shadowed ballet. 2 black SUVs idled in the alley, engines purring against the morning chill, exhaust mingling with the river's briny tang. May slid into the back of the lead vehicle, sandwiched between Jay and a silent driver, the leather seats cold and unyielding. Ji-hoon took the passenger seat up front, his presence a magnetic pull, possessive yet restrained, like a guard dog leashed by his own rules. As they pulled out, tires crunching over ice, she caught glimpses through tinted windows. The riverside willows bending in the wind, barges groaning under their loads, the distant hum of cranes at the docks, tension coiled tighter on the bridge. Jay's radio crackled. "Eyes on a tail, 2 cars back, silver plates, dragon style." Ji-hoon didn't flinch, but his hand rested near the dash console, where a hidden switch could deploy chaff or call in reinforcements. "Lose them at the tunnel," he ordered, voice calm as polished steel. The driver accelerated, weaving through sparse traffic, the Han's grey waters flashing below like a serpent's scales. May gripped the door handle, heart pounding against her ribs. Autonomy screamed to jump at the next light, but fear and something warmer, a spark of connection in Ji-hoon's steady profile, held her. The tunnel loomed, its mouth a black maw lit by sodium arcs, the air inside thick with the echo of tires and the faint drip of condensation. Midway through, brake lights flared ahead, a stalled truck, deliberate or dumb luck. Jay cursed, scanning mirrors. "Blocked! They're closing!" Ji-hoon's code ignited, protect the innocent no matter the cost. "Out the side!" he barked, kicking open the door as the convoy halted. May scrambled after, the tunnel's chill wrapping around her like damp fingers. The roar of approaching engines deafening, they darted into a service alcove, shadows swallowing them as the tail vehicles screeched to a stop. Gunshots? No, just the bluff of horns and shouts, a diversion to flush them. Breath ragged, they emerged on the far side, commandeering a waiting motorcycle from a Lotus runner. Ji-hoon gunned the engine, May clinging to his waist, the wind whipping her hair as they sped toward the city core. The penthouse waited in a Gangnam tower, glass walls overlooking the sprawl, security layers thick as fog. But as they ascended in the private elevator, the mirrored walls reflecting their disheveled forms, May spotted it, a faint scuff on Ji-hoon's boot, red clay from the riverbank. Not from here. Had he been out in the night chasing leads or covering tracks? Safety was illusory. The real threat simmered within. Who had tipped the dragons to her knock, and what price would Ji-hoon's protection demand? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The penthouse elevator hummed upward, a sleek ascent through the steel spine of the Gangnam Tower. Its mirrored walls reflecting fractured glimpses of May and Ji-hoon, her hair tangled from the wind, his coat askew, the faint red clay on his boot catching the soft glow like an accusation. The air inside was cool and filtered, scented with the faint ozone of the building's climate control, a stark contrast to the tunnel's dank echo still ringing in her ears. May pressed against the far wall, Her pulse a steady drum, the adrenaline from the chase leaching away to leave a hollow ache in her limbs. Trust was a gamble she'd never played before, but survival had stacked the deck. Ji-hoon stood motionless, arms crossed, his dark eyes fixed on the rising floor numbers. The silver chain at his throat glinted with each subtle shift, a remnant of his father's legacy, a vow etched in metal. Protect the bloodline, honor the unspoken rules that kept the chaos at bay. He'd pulled her from the tunnels more, not out of sentiment, but necessity. The ledger scrap she'd surrendered downstairs was a key to unraveling the dragon's poach, and losing her now would bleed the Black Lotus dry. Yet as the doors slid open with a whisper, revealing the penthouse's expanse of polished marble and floor-to-ceiling glass, he felt the pull of something deeper, her defiance mirroring the fire his sister had carried before the poison took her. "Inside," he said, voice low, guiding her with a hand at her elbow. Firm, not possessive, though the warmth of his touch sent an unwelcome spark through the chill. The penthouse sprawled like a predator's lair, minimalist furniture in black leather and teak, walls lined with discreet screens displaying live feeds from the docks and river cams. The Han River snaked below, a silver vein under the midday haze, its barges crawling like insects. Security hummed invisibly, motion sensors in the rugs, biometric locks on every door, the faint whir of drones patrolling the rooftop terrace. Jay would arrive separately, tailing any shadows, but for now it was just them, the city's pulse throbbing through the glass. May stepped forward, the marble cold under her borrowed shoes, the space both sanctuary and cage. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Seoul's skyline, towers piercing the clouds. The distant rumble of traffic a muffled roar. She caught her reflection in the glass, pale, resolute, but edged with doubt. The red clay nagged at her. The safe house alley was concrete and snow, not river mud. Had Ji-hoon slipped out in the night, perhaps to confront the lookout who'd spotted the sedan? Or was it a tell from deeper betrayals, like the foreman at Hanjin who'd eyed her shifts too closely? "You live like this?" she asked, turning to face him, her voice cutting the silence. The kitchen island gleamed with untouched fruit and a decanter of whiskey, the air laced with the subtle spice of aged oak. Independence clawed at her. She'd crossed borders alone, forged papers in her own hand, but here, autonomy felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Ji-hoon shrugged off his coat, hanging it on a rack that concealed a panic button. "It's defensible. High ground, no blind spots." He poured 2 glasses of water from a filtered pitcher, the ice clinking like distant gunfire, and slid one across the counter. His eyes flicked to her sock where the scrap had been, then back. "The code demands it. Protect what's under your roof, but it doesn't mean blind faith." He leaned against the island, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms corded with tension, faint scars from old knife fights tracing white lines. "That clay? From checking the riverbank last night. Thought I saw a drone skim the water, dragons testing our feeds." May sipped the water, cool and tasteless, buying time. His explanation rang true enough. Drones were cheap now, off the shelf with hacked cams, but suspicion lingered like the river's brine on her skin. "And the beep in the hallway? Your cams or something else?" A flicker crossed his face, gone before she could pin it. "Maintenance alert, old building." He set his glass down, the clink echoing. "Rest. Jay's bringing clothes, food. We'll decode the scrap with the full team tonight, cross-reference manifests, pull plates from the tunnel cams." His tone brooked no argument, but beneath it lay the push-pull. His possessiveness in offering shelter, her ethics rebelling against becoming a piece in his game. Legacy weighed on him. The Black Lotus wasn't just roots and bribes, it was the vow to his father's ghost, never letting rivals fracture what he'd built from ashes. She nodded, retreating to the guest room he'd indicated, a sparse suite with a king bed draped in crisp linens, the window overlooking the river's bend, where the docks hid their secrets. The door clicked shut behind her, but she didn't relax. Stripping off the sweater, she paced the cool tile, ears straining for the penthouse's subtle sounds. The hum of the AC, a faint radio chatter from the security console down the hall. Her burner was gone, ditched in the escape, but paranoia whispered of bugs in the walls. She sank onto the bed, the mattress yielding like a trap, and closed her eyes, only to snap them open at a soft vibration. Not her imagination. The bedside table held a house phone, its line buzzing with an incoming call. She lifted the receiver, heart slamming. "Hello?" Static crackled, then a voice, distorted, low, with a hint of a Busan accent. "You think the tower saves you? Silver Fox knows your knock." A pause, the line hissing like wind over ice. "Check the foreman at Hanjin. He's the leak." Click. The dial tone droned on. May's hands shook as she replaced the receiver, the room's silence now oppressive, the river's grey expanse mocking her through the glass. A wrong number? Or a dragon ploy to sow doubt? She burst from the room, finding Ji-hoon in the living area, already on his tablet, cross-checking the scrap's codes against encrypted ledgers. "Your phone. Someone called." "About Silver Fox." "Said the foreman's the leak." Ji-hoon's head snapped up, the tablet forgotten. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his presence filling the space, sandalwood and resolve. "Show me." But as he reached for the receiver, his radio buzzed. Jay's voice, urgent. "Boss, convoy hit a snag. Tail on the bridge, same sedan, and the penthouse cams just glitched. Blackout on the river feed." The words hung like smoke. Ji-hoon grabbed her arm, steering her toward the panic room door hidden behind a bookshelf, reinforced steel, stocked with supplies for sieges. Inside. Now. As the door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, the penthouse lights flickered, plunging the outer room into shadow. Outside, through a reinforced viewport, May saw the river stir. A barge angling oddly toward the tower's base, its horn blaring a warning. Staged, or the storm's echo turning the environment hostile. In the dim red glow of the panic room's emergency lights, Ji-hoon pulled up a secondary feed on a wall screen. Grainy footage of the foreman at Hanjin slipping an envelope to a dragon runner under the crane's shadow. Betrayal confirmed, but at what cost? The call had come from inside the penthouse line, hacked or from one of his own. As the barge's wake slapped the pilings below, May wondered, was Ji-hoon's code strong enough to weather the fracture, or would it demand a sacrifice neither was ready to pay? The panic room's red emergency lights cast elongated shadows across the reinforced walls, turning Ji-hoon's face into a mask of stark angles and controlled fury. The air was stale, laced with the metallic tang of recycled oxygen and the faint hum of backup generators kicking in below the penthouse floor. May pressed against the cool steel panel, her breath shallow, the house phone's anonymous warning echoing in her mind like a ricocheting bullet. The wall screen flickered with the secondary feed. The Hanjin foreman, his face blurred by pixelation but unmistakable. Paunchy, balding, slipping that envelope under the cover of a crane swing arm. The timestamp read 4:17 a.m., hours before her knock on the safe house door. Betrayal wasn't abstract. It was a timestamp, a handoff in broad daylight. Ji-hoon's fingers flew over the console, pulling up access logs for the penthouse network. "Hacked," he muttered, voice a low growl that vibrated through the confined space. The barge outside loomed larger on the inset monitor, its hull groaning against the current, wake slapping the tower's submerged pilings with rhythmic thuds that May felt in her chest. Not a collision course yet, but close enough to suggest intent, a distraction to mask something worse. Drones, divers, or just the river's natural fury amplified by the hacked cams. His code burned hotter now. Protect the inner circle, excise the rot before it spread. But May's presence complicated it. She was no blood relation, just a woman who'd pleaded at his door, her autonomy clashing against his instinctive claim. "Who was that on the phone?" she demanded. stepping closer, the red glow highlighting the defiance in her eyes. The sweater hung loose on her frame, but her stance was unyielding, ethics demanding answers even as fear coiled in her gut. She'd built her life on self-reliance, forged visas, midnight shifts sorting manifests under flickering fluorescence, but this web of lies pulled her deeper, testing the boundary between survival and surrender. Ji-hoon didn't look up, his scarred knuckles white on the controls. Could be a plant. Dragons spoof lines all the time. Burner relays through public Wi-Fi nodes downtown. He tapped a sequence, restoring partial power to the outer lights. The penthouse flickered back to life on the screen, empty and silent. Jay's convoy signal blinked green on a side panel. He'd shaken the tail, en route with reinforcements. But the foreman's face lingered, a ghost from May's warehouse days. The way he'd lingered after shifts, asking pointed questions about irregular weights, his breath sour with soju. Had he marked her as the weak link from the start, feeding her scraps of the ledger to draw the Lotus in? The barge's horn blared again, closer now, the river's surface churning white under the midday overcast. May peered through the viewport, the glass thick enough to withstand small arms fire, the world outside warped like a funhouse mirror. Seoul's skyline blurred in the haze, traffic a distant snarl on the bridges, but down below, shadows moved. Two figures on the barge deck, gesturing toward the tower, not crew, too deliberate, coats bulky against the wind. "They're signaling," she said, voice tight. "Access codes, or just scouting for the next hit?" Ji-hoon's jaw clenched, the silver chain at his throat shifting as he swallowed. Legacy pressed on him like the room's unyielding walls, his father's empire built on river routes, shattered by a similar inside leak that ended in a hail of bullets at a dockside meet. He'd sworn never to repeat it, no innocent sacrificed, debts settled in blood only if unavoidable. May wasn't innocent in the game now, but her plea had invoked that vow, turning protection into possession. He grabbed a secure tablet from the wall rack, syncing it to the Black Lotus's encrypted server. Pulling foreman records. If he's the leak, we trace the envelope, plates, drop point. The screen populated with data, grainy stills from hidden cams. The envelope's handover captured at an odd angle, revealing a partial plate on the Dragon Runner's van. KOR 472, registered to a shell trucking firm in Busan. Cross-referenced with the scrap May had surrendered, it matched a rerouted shipment. Silver Fox, flagged for laundering, weights inflated by hidden compartments of untraceable cash. Human error? No. Deliberate. The foreman's rotation shifted to overlap with Dragon Guards, buying time for tampered seals. "He's been bleeding us for 6 months," Ji-hoon said, the words laced with restrained rage. "And you were the loose thread he didn't count on." May's stomach twisted, the push of gratitude warring with the pull of suspicion. She'd accepted his door for warmth, his convoy for safety, but each step eroded her independence, like the river carving canyons over time. "If I'm the thread, cut me loose. I didn't sign up for your feuds." Yet even as she spoke, the warmth of his earlier touch lingered, a forbidden anchor in the storm. The panic room's confines amplified it, the air thick with unspoken tension, their breaths sinking in the red haze. A sharp buzz cut through, Jay's voice on the intercom, distorted but urgent. "Boss, we're at the lobby. Cams show clear, but the barge docked unauthorized. 2 divers in the water, planting something on the pilings. Magnet charges, looks like." The environment turned hostile. The hands chill, seeping through the steel, waves lapping higher with the incoming tide. Ji-hoon's hand hovered over the extraction button, summoning the private chopper from the rooftop pad. "Hold position. We are extracting now." He turned to May, eyes locking with hers, dark, intense, the code fracturing under pressure. "You stay with me. No running." It wasn't a question, but a pledge. Possessiveness edged with vulnerability. The door unsealed with a hiss, spilling them into the dim penthouse, emergency lights pulsing like a heartbeat. They moved fast, Ji-hoon leading with pistol drawn, the marble floor slick underfoot from a brief power surge's condensation. Outside, the barge's deck lights flared, illuminating the divers surfacing, Black Lotus reinforcements closing in from speedboats, radios crackling with orders. In the elevator descent, May caught Ji-hoon's profile in the mirrors, jaw set, but a flicker of doubt in his eyes. The foreman's betrayal was partial discovery, but the phone call, it had routed through the penthouse server, logs showing an internal ping before the hack, one of his own. As the doors opened to the secured garage, engines roaring to life, she whispered, "Who else knew I was coming here?" The question hung, unanswered, as tires screeched into the underpass, the river's threat fading behind, but the true fracture widening ahead. If trust was the real currency, how much had already been spent? The garage's underpass swallowed the black SUV like a concrete vein, tires screeching against the oil-slicked floor as Ji-hoon gripped the wheel, the engine's roar drowning out the distant slap of the river against the pilings. May huddled in the back, the leather seats sticky with tension sweat, her borrowed sweater clinging like a second skin. The air reeked of exhaust and rubber, the garage lights streaking past in yellow blurs, sodium arcs flickering from the power glitch that had nearly trapped them upstairs. Jay's convoy trailed in a second vehicle, headlights cutting through the dim like wary eyes. But the question she'd whispered lingered, unanswered, a fracture in the humid air. Who else knew? She pressed again, leaning forward as they burst onto the service road, the tower shrinking in the side mirror. Seoul's midday sprawl unfolded, horns blaring from elevated highways, the Han's grey curve snaking parallel, its barges now just distant specks under the overcast sky. The diver's threat had been real. Magnet charges, rudimentary but effective against the tower's foundation, if not for Jay's intercept. But the phone call, routed internally, gnawed at her. Independence demanded clarity. She wouldn't be a pawn blindfolded by his code. Ji-hoon glanced in the rear view, his knuckles white on the wheel, the silver chain at his throat glinting with each sharp turn. The core team, Jay, the lookout from the docks, and Minji, our cipher expert, handles the hacks. His voice was clipped, edged with the strain of evasion, but beneath it lay the weight of legacy. His father's syndicate had crumbled on a whisper, a trusted lieutenant selling routes for a triad payout. He'd rebuilt it on vigilance, but May's arrival had stirred old ghosts. Protect the door opener, yes, but at what erosion of his autonomy? The foreman's our lead. We'll squeeze him at the old warehouse on the east docks. No more ghosts. The convoy weaved through industrial backstreets, away from Gangnam's gloss, toward the river's gritty underbelly. Warehouses hulking like rusted behemoths, their corrugated sides dripping with condensation, the air thick with the brine of low tide and diesel fumes from idling trucks. May scanned the mirrors, paranoia sharpening her senses. A white van lingering 2 cars back, its plates muddied, or just traffic's indifferent flow. The push-pull twisted inside her, gratitude for his pull from the cold, but suspicion of the possessiveness in his commands, like she was already ledger-bound. Jay's voice crackled over the secure radio. "Clear so far, boss, but that barge crew's scattered. One dove back in. Current took him under the bridge." A pause, static hissing like suppressed secrets. Penthouse logs show the call originated from the service elevator cam feed. Someone patched in during the glitch. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened, accelerating past a chain-link fence, rattling in the wind. The warehouse loomed ahead, a squat fortress of brick and steel, its loading bays shuttered, guarded by Black Lotus sentries in unmarked jackets, their breath fogging in the chill. They pulled into the shadowed yard, gravel crunching under tires, the river's lap audible now, a rhythmic underscore to the tension. Inside, the space echoed with the hollow drip of overhead pipes and the faint hum of fluorescent tubes buzzing to life. Stacks of crates loomed like silent witnesses, labeled for innocuous imports, electronics, textiles. But May knew better from her dock days. Hollowed for contraband, weights fudged in manifests. Minji waited at a scarred metal table, her laptop screen casting a blue pallor on her sharp features, fingers dancing over keys like a pianist in a storm. Late 30s, wiry and unassuming, she nodded as Ji-hoon entered, Jay sealing the bay door with a clang that reverberated through the rafters. "Foreman's van traced to a drop in Incheon," she said without preamble, pulling up a grainy map dotted with pins. Partial plate from the envelope matches a Dragon safe house. And the call? Spoofed through our own router. Internal IP, bounced off a burner in the building's basement. Not external hack. Someone here. May's pulse spiked, the air turning heavier, laced with the musty tang of stacked pallets and old oil. She stepped closer, peering at the screen, timestamps aligning with her safe house arrival, a subtle anomaly in the cam feeds, a shadow in the alley footage, not snow, but a figure lingering before Jay opened the door. "The enforcer who let me in," she said, voice steady despite the knot in her throat. His sleeve, red stain. I thought blood, but maybe ink from a note, or a tracker signal. Ji-hoon froze, his eyes flicking to Jay, who stood by the door, arms crossed, expression a mask of loyalty. The code clashed within him, family above all, but betrayal's scent was unmistakable, like the river's rot after a spill. "Jay?" The name hung, low and probing, the warehouse's chill amplifying the silence. Jay shifted, his massive frame tensing, the faint scar on his jaw, from a border skirmish years back, twitching. "Boss, it wasn't," Jay started, but Minji cut in, her laptop beeping, an intercepted text from a Dragon line, decrypted in real time. "Silver Fox payout to an insider, initials JPJ Park." The words landed like a jammed exit, trapping them all in the reveal. Jay's hand twitched toward his coat, but Ji-hoon was faster, drawing his pistol with fluid precision, the metallic click echoing off the crates. "You sold the knock?" Ji-hoon growled, the betrayal slicing through his restraint. Possessiveness flaring, not just for the syndicate, but for the woman he'd pulled into this fray. May backed against a pallet, heart hammering, ethics warring with the raw fear of fracture. Loyalty tested, her autonomy now a shield in the crossfire. Jay's eyes darted, sweat beading despite the cold. "They had my sister. Dragons grabbed her last week, leverage for the roots. I fed them the tail, not her." But the warehouse lights flickered then, a blackout plunging them into shadow, the river's hum swelling as if the environment conspired. Backup generators whirred too late. In the dark, a side door groaned open. Reinforcements or rivals? As flashlight beams cut the gloom, May grabbed Ji-hoon's arm, the touch electric amid the chaos. Trust hung by a thread, but whose? And if Jay's confession was the partial truth, what deeper fracture waited in the ledgers? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The warehouse plunged into inky blackness, the blackout swallowing the fluorescent hum like a sudden breath held. May's hand tightened on Ji-hoon's arm, the fabric of his shirt rough under her fingers, his muscles coiled like a spring under pressure. The air thickened with the sharp scent of ozone from tripped circuits and the underlying rot of the river seeping through cracked concrete, tide rising, or just the warehouse's perpetual damp. Crates loomed as vague silhouettes, their edges lost in shadow, the drip of a distant pipe now amplified into a mocking heartbeat. Jay's confession hung unfinished, his silhouette frozen midway to the side door, flashlight beams slicing erratic paths like searchlights in fog. "Boss, wait!" Jay's voice cracked, gravelly with desperation, but Ji-hoon yanked May behind a pallet stack, the wood splintering slightly under their weight. His pistol swept the gloom, the metallic tang of gun oil cutting through the mustiness. Minji's laptop screen glowed faintly from her crouched position by the table, her fingers stabbing at keys, pulling up emergency overrides. Generators sabotaged, wires cut in the panel, not a glitch. Someone prepped this. Her words were clipped, urgent, the blue light etching worry lines on her face. The code Ji-hoon lived by, excise the rot, protect the circle, fractured now. Jay's initials burning in the decrypted text like a brand. Footsteps echoed from the side door, heavy and deliberate, gravel crunching under boots that didn't belong to Lotus men. May's breath caught, the chill raising gooseflesh on her arms. Autonomy screamed to run, find an exit in the chaos, but Ji-hoon's grip anchored her, possessive in its unyielding calm. He'd opened his door to her plea, pulled her through tunnels and towers. But this, betrayal from within, tested the vow his father's death had forged. No innocence lost, debts settled clean. Yet May wasn't innocent anymore. She was the spark that ignited the fracture. Her ledger scrapped the fuse. "Down!" Ji-hoon hissed, shoving her lower as beams swept closer. 3 figures, coats bulky with concealed gear. Whispers in guttural Korean laced with Busan slang. Dragons, here to finish the poach. Jay bolted then, not toward his boss but the intruders, his massive frame colliding with the lead one in a grunt of impact. Flesh met flesh, a scuffle muffled by the crates, flashlight clattering to spin wild shadows across the walls. Minji cursed, her screen flickering as she patched a signal to Jay's trailing convoy. "Intruders in the yard, send the extract now." May's mind raced, piecing the investigative thread amid the adrenaline. The red stain on Jay's sleeve, not blood or ink, but a smeared access code sticker torn from the warehouse panel. She'd glimpsed it in the safe house, dismissed it as rust, but now it fit. The blackout prepped by an insider, the phone call spoofed through familiar lines. Human error? No, calculated. Jay feeding just enough to draw the dragons, bargaining his sister's life against the syndicate's bleed. But Silver Fox loomed larger, the ghost operation not just cash laundering, but a triad pivot, rerouting entire lanes through bought guards like the foreman. May's ethics rebelled. She'd crossed borders for a clean slate, not to fuel this cycle of loyalty and fear, but prudence pinned her. Bolt now, and the river would claim her like the diver Jay mentioned. A shot cracked, muffled by a suppressor, the bullet ricocheting off a metal with a high ping that set her ears ringing. Ji-hoon returned fire. 2 precise bursts, his training evident in the controlled recoil, driving the shadows back toward the door. "Minji, codes, unlock the bay," he barked, pulling May toward the main loading area, their footsteps echoing like betrayals. The environment turned savage. The blackout jammed the overhead doors, servos whining futilely, while outside the river's wind howled through vents, carrying the distant thrum of approaching engines. Lotus reinforcements or dragon ambush. They reached the control panel, Ji-hoon's free hand punching in overrides, sparks flying from severed wires that bit like frost. May scanned the gloom, spotting Jay pinned against a crate, wrestling a knife from the lead intruder. His face twisted, not in rage but regret, eyes flicking to Ji-hoon like a plea. "They'll kill her, my sister, if I don't deliver the woman," Jay shouted over the fray, the confession raw, loyalty fracturing under familial fear. The push-pull tore at Ji-hoon. Jay had been his brother-in-arms since the border runs, scars shared in ambushes, but the code demanded excision. Possessiveness surged, not just for the syndicate, but for May, her independence a mirror to the autonomy he'd long sacrificed. Minji's voice cut through, bay opening, 30 seconds. The doors groaned, grinding upward on emergency power, admitting slivers of grey daylight and the river's briny slap. But the intruders rallied, one lobbing a flashbang that rolled toward them, small, off the shelf, but blinding in the confined space. Ji-hoon kicked it back, the explosion blooming in white heat and thunder, May shielding her eyes as the concussive wave rattled crates and her bones. Ears ringing, she stumbled forward with him, the bay now half open, gravel yard visible, Jay's convoy screeching in, headlights blazing like judgment. They spilled out, Ji-hoon firing cover as May dove into the lead SUV, the door slamming like a verdict. Tires spun on wet gravel, flinging mud that splattered the undercarriage, the warehouse shrinking in the mirror as they barreled toward the river road. Jay broke free in the chaos, vanishing into the shadows, fleeing with the dragons or buying time. Minji piled into the trailing vehicle, radioing ahead. Foreman's en route to Incheon drop. Silver Fox meet tonight. But Jay, he tagged the convoy GPS before the blackout. Ji-hoon's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles scarred and white, the silver chain at his throat, a cold reminder of vows, unbroken yet bent. The river paralleled them, its surface choppy under gathering clouds, a storm front rolling in to mirror the internal tempest. May met his eyes in the rear view, her defiance softened by the shared escape, trust forged in fire, but suspicion lingering like the mud on the tires. "He sold us for family," she said quietly, the words heavy with her own ghosts of crossed borders and unpaid debts. "What's your code worth when it's blood against blood?" The question pierced, Ji-hoon's jaw tightening as thunder rumbled distant, the first fat raindrops smearing the windshield. Jay's tag meant the convoy was compromised, a digital noose tightening, rival factions closing in, or a desperate bid for redemption. As they veered toward the east docks, the real confrontation brewing, May wondered if protection demanded sacrifice, whose autonomy would break first. Rain lashed the windshield in relentless sheets, turning the river road into a blurred ribbon of asphalt and churning water. The SUV hydroplaned slightly as Ji-hoon downshifted, the engine's growl underscoring the thunder's rumble overhead. May braced against the seat, the leather creaking under her grip, the air inside thick with the scent of wet wool and adrenaline-soured sweat. Jay's GPS tag pulsed like a heartbeat on the dash console, a digital betrayal leading the dragons straight to their flank. The east docks loomed ahead, a labyrinth of cranes and shipping containers stacked like rusted monoliths, their sodium lights hazy through the storm. Barges groaned against moorings, the Han's current swollen and treacherous, waves slapping pilings with the force of unresolved grudges. Ji-hoon's eyes flicked to the rear view, where Minji's vehicle trailed, its wipers slashing furiously. "Split at the fork," he radioed, voice steady but edged with steel. "You draw the tail, we'll hit the Silver Fox drop." The code anchored him, protect the core, excise the threat. But Jay's fracture had cracked it. Blood ties pulling against syndicate loyalty. May watched his profile, the rain carving rivulets down his temple, mixing with the mud from earlier. Her own conflicts churned. The plea at his door had brought warmth, but this chase demanded more. Autonomy traded for the fragile shield of his world, ethics bending under the weight of survival. Minji's acknowledgement crackled back. Copy. Foreman's van sighted. Incheon plates parked by Container 47, guards rotating every 15, but storms jamming their cams. The fork came fast, tires sluicing through puddles as they veered left toward the water's edge, Minji peeling right into the industrial sprawl. Headlights pierced the downpour, illuminating glimpses of the dockside chaos, workers in yellow slickers scurrying under tarps. The briny tang of the river invading through vents, mixed with the oily reek of fuel spills. Ji-hoon killed the lights, navigating by memory and the console's faint glow, parking in the shadow of a looming gantry crane whose chains rattled like chains of fate. They slipped out, hoods up against the deluge, the gravel mushy underfoot. May followed close, her borrowed shoes squelching, heart pounding in sync with the storm's fury. The foreman's van idled by the container, exhaust curling like smoke signals, its driver, paunchy silhouette unmistakable, huddled inside, oblivious to the shadows closing in. But Jay's tag had bought time. Distant engines growled over the wind, dragons converging, perhaps tipped by the same leak that had spoofed the penthouse call. Ji-hoon signaled silence, drawing his pistol low, the rain beading on its barrel like unshed tears. A figure emerged from the container's gloom, not the foreman, but a wiry man in a drenched coat, clipboard in hand. Silver Fox himself, the triad ghost, May had glimpsed in ledgers. His face was gaunt, eyes sharp under a sodden cap, Busan accent thick as he barked into a radio. Payouts short, Lotus cut the route again. Get the woman, she's the witness. The words confirmed it. The threat was organized, a web of rerouted cash and bought loyalties. May's knock the catalyst that pulled the threads taut. No supernatural hand, just human greed, institutional blind spots in port security, and the natural cover of the storm masking their moves. Ji-hoon lunged from cover, tackling the man against the container with a thud that echoed off metal walls. May darted to the van, yanking the door open, the foreman startled, eyes widening in recognition. You saw the logs," he stammered, hands fumbling for the dash. But she was faster, snatching his phone, its screen lighting up with incoming texts, coordinates for the East Docks, Jay's initials in the sender field. "He sold us all," she whispered, the rain soaking her to the bone, chill seeping into her marrow like doubt. Shouts erupted. Dragons bursting from a nearby shed, 4 strong, rain-slicked and armed with bats and blades, no gunfire to avoid alerting patrols. Ji-hoon grappled with Silver Fox, fists flying in a blur of grunts and splashes, the triad's clipboard skittering into a puddle. May backed away, phone clutched like a talisman, but a dragon lunged at her, tall, hooded, swinging wide. She dodged, autonomy fueling her sidestep, grabbing a loose chain from the ground to lash out, the metal whipping through air with a whistle. It connected with a crack, not breaking bone, but staggering him into the mud. The foreman bolted then, slipping on the wet gravel, but Jay appeared from the storm's veil, massive frame outlined by lightning, face etched with torment. "Stop!" he roared, tackling the fleeing man into the shallows, water splashing up in cold arcs. The dragons paused, confusion rippling through their ranks, Jay's betrayal turning on itself. "I fed you scraps," he growled at their leader, pinning the foreman. But the boss... He's family. Silver Fox goes down, or my sister's blood's on you. It was sacrifice. Jay exposing the drop, drawing the heat to redeem his code, the cost and injury from the fray, a gash across his arm, blood mixing with rain, no graphic spray but enough to stagger him. Ji-hoon subdued Silver Fox with a precise hold, zip-tying his wrists as Minji's reinforcements screeched in. Floodlights bathing the scene in harsh white. The dragons scattered into the night, 2 apprehended by the arriving Lotus men, the rest swallowed by the dock's maze. Human error in the storm's chaos, patrols delayed by flooded roads. The foreman spilled under pressure, confessing the reroutes, bribes funneled through tampered manifests. Silver Fox's operation exposed as a splinter triad play, exploiting Black Lotus fractures. Victory came costly. Jay's wound bound hastily in the van, exposure risking triad retaliation, Ji-hoon's trust scarred but intact. As the storm broke to a drizzle, the group converged by the SUV, the river calming to a murmur, its surface reflecting fractured dock lights. May handed Ji-hoon the phone, their fingers brushing, warmth amid the wet chill. "It's over," she said, voice raw, the push-pull resolving into quiet resolve. His eyes met hers, the possessiveness softened to partnership, legacy redefined. Power restrained not by iron rules alone, but by the bonds forged in crisis. Back at the penthouse, as dawn painted the Han in pale gold, Jay sat bandaged on the couch, Minji decoding the final ledgers on her laptop. Silver Fox's network unraveled, arrests pending through bought cops, routes secured. But the true treasure emerged in the quiet. Ji-hoon's hand on May's shoulder. A silent pledge of protection without chains. Trust earned through the night's fire. Jae's sacrifice bought his sister's freedom, a found family mending around the table. Loyalty outlasting the spoils of cash and control. May gazed out at the river, its currents steady now, the adventure's memory a transformative scar. Ambition yielding to prudence, suspicion to chosen kin. In this world of shadows, what remained was the door he'd opened and the life they'd build beyond it. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.